Guardianship reality. Who's looking out for America's abandoned, abused, neglected children and the elderly? That is the key focus of this book, which was written by myself, Robert Furtick, and Fernando Gutierrez. This is the cover. It was awarded 5 stars. Within this book, the first chapter is about best interests of the children. It talks about America's dependency system as seen through the eyes of the guardians. So this is 2 books in one. We'll cover best interests of the children first. This cover was awarded 5 stars. This image of an earlier book, I show it again because the expression she shows is the tragic nature that many children experience in the foster care and in the court system. So I think this picture really shows many attributes of the typical child. The objectives are to enlighten the public about the Department of Children and Families' systemic challenges in Florida, but it's also true there's a DCF in 50 states in this country. So it's to inform the legislators about the important key issues surrounding the protection of children. It provides Department of Children and Family and guardians with practical solutions. That's why I call it guardianship realities. It will educate social workers about the real challenges. The second half of the book, which is about the elderly, if you read that and study it carefully, you'll be ready to take the test on 80 or 90% of the questions asked to become a professional guardian. If you're looking for real works of charity, you'll find satisfaction as a guardian ad litem volunteer. We perhaps saved about 30 children from probable danger during our 5 years as guardian ad litem. We resigned because of the dangerous policy changes to close cases faster. We can get into that later. Now, in life, we have God's laws, natural laws, and secular laws. I discussed that before. God's laws are the 10 Commandments, the Golden Rule. Natural laws are fundamental rights of life, liberty, and property. Children are considered property of the parents. The government doesn't give us these rights. These are natural laws. We continue to evolve civil rights to maintain a society. Here's some statistics. Florida is now over 20 million, approaching 21 million people. Most of those, many of them, migrated from New York. New York only has 19 million people today. Of those 20 million, 20% are children. Those age 60 plus are 5 million or 25%. That's expected to double by 2030. Youth in Florida, foster care, there's over 415,000 children in foster care today, and it's increasing. Likewise, 238,000 adolescent children age out of foster care at the age of 18 to 21 without a permanent family. The state gives them some money so that they can, and some temporary quarters so that they can get their act together in life. There's 30,000 cases of children who have been neglected or abused. Every year, it has not gone down. And Florida's challenges will dramatically increase in future years. Why? Because there's more children and more cases, and there's more elderly who migrated from New York and other places. The elderly is growing much faster, however. Now, in terms of training, here's a comparison of guardian ad litem versus elder care guardians, so-called professional guardians. Their training is similar in many respects. Interesting, guardian ad litem people face more time in front of a judge, whereas elder care as needed. We both visit our clients at least once a month. We have more reporting requirements as guardian ad litem than elder care guardians. Our authority, however, is limited. We have to go to the judge whenever we need authority to do something, whereas the court defines what the professional guardians can and cannot do. We are volunteers as guardian ad litem. My wife and I did this for 5 years, and then I became an elder care guardian for 5 years. As an elder care guardian, you can be paid. In our case, we didn't take a dime because we were well off and retired. Today, there's about 40 or 50 guardians for one supervisor. That's terrible. And they have very limited authority. Reports include monthly visitation reports, judicial reviews every 5 months, and very challenging termination of parental rights when required. Here's the embryo. When is an embryo a person? We believe that embryo is a person at conception. It contains 100% of the human genome. Some people believe the embryo is not a person until it's born. So when? A few seconds after birth? Abortion always involves an innocent victim. Now, Roe v. Wade might be overturned in 2021 because it's based on no factual information whatsoever. Some say it's settled law. It's not really settled law. And bad law has been overturned in the past. The key issue is the absence of evidence is not evidence. DNA sequences, which did not exist in 1973, that a fertilized egg contains 100% of the human genome. Now it's obvious. So who speaks for the unborn? I say it's not about pro-choice or pro-life. It's about what is chosen, life or death of the unborn and the elderly. Reasons given for abortions in Florida, which is similar around the country, is shown here. About 98% of all abortions are elective, including 30% for economic reasons. Children are beautiful. Here's a child lying with a dog. Florida and 37 other states have laws which agree that 2 deaths are involved in a pregnant homicide. If that's true, then obviously the embryo is a person. Babies are born beautiful, innocent, naturally trusting, until they learn otherwise from their parents and their peers. The real fun begins after birth. How many of these precious children are abused and neglected after they are born? Who children are and what they may become is determined by 4 key guiding factors: DNA, parental care, education, environment. All children are born innocent. What we do or don't do determines who they become. We have 3 children ourselves. We know that to be true. Absolutely. All challenges. should be character-building events. Basic needs of children and the elderly. When somebody becomes 80, 90 years old, they become like a child again. You have biological welfare, safety and security, a sense of belonging, self-awareness, transcendence, faith, and belief. Biological welfare, of course, is food, shelter, health, clothes, sleep, safety and security, stability, love and belonging or bonding, positive family role models, personal responsibility, a sense of achievement, cognitive self-awareness, personal growth, sex fulfillment, and faith. Children are curious. They're naturally curious. If the parents don't teach them morals early in life, I would say before the age of 10, ideally, it's usually too late when they become teenagers. Once those hormones kick in, forget about it. We know we had 3 teenagers, and my wife was a school teacher for 45 years. Lack of faith and morality are key problems. Without a good balanced education, they will fail. We were not allowed to talk about Christianity as volunteers, guardian ad litem volunteers, unless the parents asked a question. Here are the major abuse neglect key factors. Most children are damaged under the age of 6 because they can't defend themselves, they can't speak up. Parents and caregivers under the age of 30, many of them don't know how to be parents, and they lack responsibility. Of course, low-income single parents with physical, emotional stresses. Children left with caregivers who lack emotional attachment to the children, such as a paramour, which is another word for a unmarried lover. Caregivers with unrealistic expectations of children's development and their behavior. And mostly substance abuse among the primary caregivers. All of these, in our cases, lacked faith. They lacked a sense of morality. And without a good balanced education, they fail. Children who die from abuse in Florida was the second worst example. They had 2.44 deaths per 100,000 children. I'm sure it's equal or greater today. The key reasons for children who die from abuse are bedwetting, child crying, fussy eating, disobedient behavior. And the mothers are the perpetrators, the fathers second. More white people, and 32% are Hispanic. But interestingly, 5% of African Americans abuse their children. Why is that? That's worthy of a study in and of itself. How it all begins. There's a hotline. Okay, so the teacher or a concerned citizen, or it might be a relative, calls the hotline and complains. Many cases don't get reported at all, we have to remember. So a child protection investigator goes out and investigates. He files a report. If he believes that the case has merit, then it continues. Otherwise, if the risk is low, the case is closed. So the child is placed with a family member. A case plan is provided. If there's no family member, then the child is placed in foster care. There's 1,415,000 children in foster care in Florida alone. Case plan is provided by the court, and they have to complete that plan within 1 year to get their child back. If the risk is low, in-home services might be provided to help the parents. So it all begins with a hotline call. As I said, many cases don't get reported at all. Now, when you go to the court, it's an uneven contest. The parents have their own lawyers. In fact, they can have a lawyer appointed by the court for each parent. No wonder the costs go up. Case manager has their lawyer. The state assistant DA is there. And guardian ad litem has their lawyer. So it's a battle between the lawyers and the judge. We are supposed to not speak up as guardians except through our lawyer, but sometimes we get to see him 10 minutes before the court hearing. Now, I have always spoken up, no matter what the rules are. Now, children in most states are considered, in all states, are considered property, just like cows and horses and sheep. Guardian ad litem are outgunned by all those lawyers and the parents, and the judge obviously has the real power. So the balance has shifted away from independent guardians who are supposed to be the eyes and ears of the judge. Now, many judges are either blind or deaf in some of these cases. Now, there's a few good judges out there. There's a long process involved in the court. Initial reports, petitions, custody hearings, pre-hearings, adjudication, etc., etc., etc. I won't go into details about this. If the parents don't get their act together within 12 months, give or take, then there's what is known as termination of parental rights, is a court hearing, and one has to prepare carefully for that. But in most cases, mitigation is attempted. And after termination of parental rights, it might take a year or two before the child is finally adopted. Here's one of our cases. I call it clueless parents. The father's searching for a beer while the child is playing with dangerous chemicals and objects in the kitchen. The clueless parents are young and inexperienced. Our first case was more than 5 years in and out of court due to cluelessness. So how do you can't take a child away just because the parents are clueless. You have to educate them. You have to give them many opportunities. But mom knew how to play the system. The key problems in this case was domestic violence, substance abuse. In fact, the child was found walking in the streets in traffic because mom left the door open. Some lessons learned. Do not form conclusions before investigating. Don't get emotionally involved. Gut feelings must be held in check unless you find evidence to confirm your instincts. Parents always have a second chance to correct their past problems. Sometimes the judges give them 3, 4, 5 chances. Trust, but always verify to find the real truth. And any characterization of parents negatively can be used in the court by the parents' lawyers against you. And emails are not confidential. I found out that the hard way. I said that a parent was like a snake oil salesman. And I got called on the carpet for that because it was put in an email. So be careful what you write. Can come back to haunt you. Anyhow, I was forgiven for that. We try to summarize our lessons learned in every case. Why shouldn't management at the state level do post-mortem analysis of these cases? They might learn something. Here's another case, a defiant teenage case. She had a great Hispanic family that helped her. Otherwise, she would be in jail today. She said, "I have my rights. I don't have to listen to you guardians." Typical response from this young mother who became pregnant and had a beautiful baby. Anyhow, it turned out positive after 12 months of determined effort by us and her family. Her family did not accept her bullshit. They said, "If you don't straighten out, young lady, we're going to kick you out of our house and we're going to take control of the child." So she woke up. Tough love case. This was a great success story. There were two sets of parents. One was a responsible father who married a nurse and had kept one of the children. The mother of the two children, she was hanging around with a boyfriend who was a drug addict, living on roach-infested couches with bad food and a very young child. So one case closed early. They got good marks for doing their case plan. The other case was heading for termination of parental rights. But we, my wife and I, as guardians, appealed to the mother. We said, "Look, you're living on roach-infested couch with your baby. You're not eating properly. The child is not going to get an education. What is the future for your child?" She cried and finally admitted that she should turn over her beautiful child to her aunt. And we told her that when you get your act together in the future, you can appeal to the court and get your child back. So that was a very successful case. Now, part of all case studies is what's known as home studies. You go out, we investigate, we check on the safety of the home environment. Are there electric wires hanging loose? Are there knives and other instruments in the kitchen that are dangerous for the children? Are there chemicals there? All kinds of things. I'm a stickler about that. Well, one of the case managers said, "We've approved much worse than this home." Now, this photograph is an exaggeration, but it's not too far from the truth. So we said, "Not on our watch." We fought this in the court. We had detailed photographs of the interior and exterior to show to the judge. So that case was delayed until the father got his act together and fixed up his home. Where cases fail, we had, in one case, we recommended termination of parental rights and adoption because, one, there was no evidence of bonding between the child and the parents. Two, there continued to be drug usage and domestic violence. One magistrate gave them 30 days more to get their act together. Now, we showed up unannounced and found the place smelled from drugs. So that was a bad decision by the judge. 3, parents have not completed their case plans. Well, these parents did not do all that was necessary. The children were now 15 months at foster care, and they were on psychotropic meds. This is 2 children. And they were in very bad need of special care. We won this hard-fought termination of parental rights, TPR. However, it took 8 months for the judge to get off his butt and write a written report. Then it took 1 month for the appeal, and 12 months later to finally find parents, responsible, loving parents, who would adopt these two beautiful children. So that was a successful case, and we stuck with it until the end. Overall lessons: many parents are clueless about basic parenting, especially today's generation, the millennials. Be patient and find services to help the parents. Select your case carefully. You don't want to take on a case where the father is a collector of guns and knives, and he's on drugs and tattoos all over his body. We turned down a couple of cases like that. You got to know what your limitations are. Parents are given many, many opportunities to complete their case tasks, but it's not over until the judge makes a decision and the appeal is denied. Detailed records are essential. Document, document, document. Otherwise, you'll never win the case and save the children. Here's an example of a case. This was not our case. This was another guardian who shall remain nameless. Baby Jordan, would turn 3 this summer, but his mother and the system failed him. The guardians appealed to a magistrate and said the child should not be returned to the mother. But the magistrate said, no, let's give the mom another chance. So in this case, I believe the guardians should have appealed this to a higher court, to a judge, and fought this battle. If they truly believed the mother was acting irresponsible and dangerous, they should have fought the system. And if we lost this, if the judge ruled against us, my wife and I, we would have gone to the press to save this child. It's a terrible tragedy. Let's summarize some of the problems. I try to be solution-oriented. There's a lack of caseworkers and guardians. The current 10,000 is insufficient. Addictiveness, both alcohol and drugs, is the key reason for irresponsible parenting. There's a lack of preemptive action. If you see potential danger, go to the judge. Bitch and moan about it. Don't give it up. Fight it. There's extreme caseworker turnover. Any corporation that had 70 to 80% turnover would be bankrupt today. There's at least 30,000 cases every year without sufficient resources. Continuing with some summary points. HIPAA laws inhibit preventive action in many cases. We got to get the parents to sign documents that give us access to private information. Sometimes the parents don't want to give you those. Then you have to go to a judge. There's a lot of HIPAA laws are good, but they get in the way of action to prevent serious hurt of the children. Some judges are predisposed, and liberal judges. Many will always try to give the parents one more chance, just one more chance, when it's clear that they're not going to get off their drug habit in the next 30 days. We should do a postmortem analysis of everything, every case, learn from it. We need more team effort. Recidivism. Some cases have existed for 5 to 10 years. Substance abuse is the most significant factor in all these cases. Intervention is essential. We are in these cases together, and full transparency is lacking in Florida and many other states. Our book is not just about Florida, but we cover some of the other states as well, in summary form. So, proposed action. The guardian must be more than just an adjunct to the court. There needs to be a balance of power between gals and other parties must be restored. We must not just monitor cases, but also help develop the case plans. We must stop turf battles between the various parties and the judge and guardians. Must be more integrated. We must foresee these problems much earlier. We need a team approach. Children should not be dumped anywhere. You can't dump a very young child with a group of foster kids who are teenagers. That's irresponsible. Or vice versa. Parenting courses must be more effective. More role models. Some of these parents sleep through the courses. So 5 key words for success. In general. We got to respect the dignity of life, trust in the Lord, have an attitude of gratitude, maintain family values and role models, and teach children to be responsible before they become adults. It all begins in the home. We must be able to predict child neglect and abuse. Now I want to move on to guardianship realities, the adult part of our book.